And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great Coach Turk from Northern Valley High School, track coach, cross country coach. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me in.
Absolutely. So what's your team's been doing now during this time, during COVID, being at home? How are they still preparing and getting better?
So, the state of New Jersey just recently ended our spring season. So up until that point, we were training pretty hard in hopes that our season was going to be saved, that there'd be some part of a season in June. And we were going to end June 30th or something like that. But just last week, the governor pulled the plug on that. So we kind of changed the way things were going at NV Demorest. So now we gave the kids a couple of weeks off to prepare for their fall season. So if it was a cross country runner, they were taking 2 weeks off from their spring season and getting ready. And now we're going to gear up again towards our cross country season for the fall. And then if they're a football player or if they're, soccer, tennis, whatever, we told them to get in contact with their fall coaches to get ready for their next season. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah. What are some of the things they've been doing right now that you're aware of? Do they ever report back to you? What do they say?
Yeah, so track's a great sport in a context that you can always do something to get yourself better, right? If you're a distance runner, you can always get road work in. You're a thrower, you can always get some sort of strength training in. So up until the spring season was canceled, we were posting workouts weekly. We've had a ton of guest speakers, and thankfully you came in and spoke to our team. So once a week, we've had team speakers. With the last 4 weeks, we had professional athletes speak to our team, once a night, or once a week, every night. We have the athletes check in with us to see how we're doing. We have 6 great coaches on staff at Northern Valley Demorest in charge of all different event groups. And each coach is responsible for their event group and making sure that they have something to do to make themselves a little bit better, either as an athlete, mentally, physically, socially, emotionally. We always kind of gear up an agenda so they can improve in at least one part or a couple parts of the aspects that make you a complete person.
That's great. And how have the athletes been responding to that?
You know what? It depends on the athlete.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would say this. I would say it depends what your motivation was before the pandemic. So if you were an athlete that loved to be a part of a sport for the social reasons, which I would say most athletes are involved in sports for other reasons than just winning, right? They're involved in sports for more reasons than just the sport itself. So if you were an athlete that just all your friends were out on a track team, you do it because it's a great outlet after school, 3 o'clock rolls around, you had a stressful day, you're looking forward to a run or a workout. Now that there is no competitive season, you lose that. So then what is your motivation? So your motivation has to change.
Right.
So if you're somebody who is passionate about the sport and always loved it, it's your primary sport, then your motivation is pretty clear. It didn't change. But if your motivation was to see your friends every day after school and have an hour of a nice training session, well, that's gone in this pandemic. So now, a lot of athletes have lost their motivation and really need to re-gear what their mindset is. Do I want to be a part of this sport now because it's important for my social, emotional well-being? Well, that's hugely important, right? You're at home all day in front of your computer doing virtual learning. You do need a component to work out your body, to get outside, to get some fresh air, to just make you healthier, right? So that's a motivation, should be a motivation for many people, but a lot of athletes lose that and lose perspective on that and are having a hard time re-gearing themselves towards, the new world kind of we're living in it temporarily,
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I know you said before you were blessed to have some pretty high level athletes in there, right? Who's been there?
Oh yeah. So I mean, if you look at some of our former graduates that are now, I think we have either 10 to 13 athletes that are competing at the Ivy Leagues, and they would have been at the HEP Championships this spring, and they're doing phenomenal jobs. So those kids are bummed out too, because a lot of them, especially some of my seniors that are, right, I have a senior that's at Cornell, and the Ivy Leagues are a little bit bizarre that they won't give you back that 5th year, that the other schools are promising. you can go back and do your competitive 5th year, but it's not going to be at their school, which is kind of a weird Ivy League thing. I don't know if they're going to change that. But our athletes that are on track to go compete in college that are still in high school, we have a handful of athletes that are currently being recruited. And those are always the athletes that are a little bit more intrinsically motivated than other athletes, right? They have some talent, they have some potential. They see that there's something still forward down the line that they're training for, that they want to compete in college. So their motivation is typically a little bit higher than your average high school athlete who is involved in sports, as I said, for other reasons than just continuing their sport in college.
That makes sense. And I've always felt it's great when you have alumni that were at the school that are now coming back. It's just, it becomes a lot more personal. It's easy. One of the things we talk about with building confidence is having heroes, and it's important to have the high level heroes, the Olympic champs, the world champs, those kind of things, national champs. But it's also important to have the local level heroes who've maybe trained out of the same school, the same club. They've walked the same streets, been coached by the same coaches. It just gives you a whole nother level to say, I could relate to that person. They did it, so I could do it too. I just think that's invaluable for any high school program. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say during our winter break and our spring break, we probably have 10 alumni that regularly come back during their breaks if they're not in session or whatever, and they work with our team. And it's great. Like, it's great having, I'm not going to mention any names for whatever privacy reasons, but we have like a triple jumper at Michigan State. Wow. He came back and worked with our triple jumpers during one of the winter breaks. And the kids were like, this is awesome. He's bringing new drills. He's, lively and stuff like that. My throwers always come back and work with my athletes. And it's something that they remember, because then when they were freshmen and sophomores, there was a college kid who they looked up to, or an older upperclassman that came back and worked with them. And you know how it goes. I mean, you're always talking about a winning mindset. It's how you phrase things. I could say something 1,000 times to an athlete, and it's the same message. And then one of my college athletes come back and literally said the same thing I said 2 seconds ago. And it's like this epiphany happens. Like, wow, coach, this is the best thing ever. I'm like, I just said that 20 times to you before. But, it's what, if you're a confident coach and you want to have a successful program, having things rephrased or resaid by other people, you should never be afraid to invite into your camp, because it just clicks and resonates, either at an age or a maturity level. I think Mark Twain said it the best, right? When he talked about, I forgot what book or quote it was, but he was saying, when I was younger, I ran away from home because of just how, ignorant or stupid my father was. But when I came back, I realized how smart he was. And really the maturity was not in his father, but was with his own growth. And that's with so much high school kids. They don't always see the wisdom that the older people have that are working with them. And sometimes someone who's a peer of their age says something, and all of a sudden, boom, this is so cool. You know?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it's laying what you're doing, and like what the parents do. Hopefully the good parents, they're laying very fertile soil. They're laying the path. And then when someone comes along, they're oh, that sounds really good. And they don't even realize, but that's because the parent or the good coach has been laying that foundation from the beginning. So it is important to have people that is probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of coaches will bring us in for mindset training, because sometimes hearing it from someone else, it just goes a long way. So like you said, that's just big.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So now I know you like a lot of sports psychology information. I remember you first wrote to us about that, saying that, sports psychology was very big for you. How do you prepare your team mentally? What are some of the things you do? I know is one of the best programs in the state, taking time to get to that point and then also keeping it there. So those are not two different mindsets, but what was it like on the way up and then now being the top?
So, fortunately, I took over a very successful program from Coach McLean, who was a legendary coach at Northern Valley. He's a legendary coach in the state of Kansas right now. He actually had 2 careers. And he was a phenomenal motivator, one of the best coaches I've ever known. Prior to Coach McLean was Jack Yockers, another successful coach. So I just see myself as a steward in a very successful program. Did we bring it up a little bit? Some people could say we definitely have. I like to say we're just keeping the ship going, and I hope to pass it on to another one of my alumni. But as far as mindset going in sports psychology, you have to look at it in two different components, especially with track. I think with any sport, there is a team mindset and a team psychology. And then there's the individual psychology. And there's no one right or wrong way to handle either of those two. It's got to be an approach that fits your program and your individual athletes that you feel comfortable with. So preparing them for a competition. Typically, I like to work, I'm like kind of a grassroots kind of guy. I like to work at the bottom and then get to the top of my objective, but always have the objective in mind, what we're working towards. So for example, if it's going to be we're gearing up for some team championship or whatnot, I like to have competitive moments in practice. I like to be able to practice more those difficult situations, and even spontaneously. Like I might go up to some of our field event athletes right out of the blue and say, hey, right now, in the middle of a workout, this is your last jump at the county championships. We just brought you over from the 4x4. You're gassed. What can you do right now? Just throw it down on the line and see what happens. And just prepare them for that in practice, and having that type of routine over and over again. When they do see that stimulus in the real thing, they've already done it 1,000 different ways in practice. So that's kind of like what I like to see that gets instilled with my coaches and my athletes in practice. Then if you see behaviors that start to repeat itself, that athletes are having a hard time performing in that individual setting, then that's when you try to pull them off to the side and try to give strategies that work for them, and then reapply it with the new strategy. Because if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and that one athlete never performs well, then you're doing a horrible job as a coach. Then you got to give that person the skills to be able to succeed. And I like doing that more on an individual basis than I do as a team basis. But I do a lot of team lectures, either at the beginning of the season or before some certain events, to kind of introduce certain topics so that they understand when we do introduce them in practice, that it's not foreign to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So.
Definitely. Are there some more common mental mistakes that you see than others, or mindsets that you see that a lot of athletes they cluster with that same kind of struggle?
I would say those type of common difficulties has changed generationally. I would say what I see more now than I have in the past is kind of the fear of failure. I feel like, if you look at your subconscious, it's always trying to protect itself. And one of the ways it protects itself is by creating these outs that, oh, my hamstring's a little tight today. I had a fight with my girlfriend last night. I didn't sleep last night. And when you step on the line to perform, and it's a big moment, your subconscious kind of like brings that back to the present, and it lets you say, hey, if you don't do too well today, it's okay because of this situation. And that's really your subconscious protecting you from failing, right? So first you have to recognize that every human being kind of goes through that, right? That fear of failure. Let's protect our psyche from failing when it happens. But that becomes a mechanism that's going to hurt you for the rest of your life, right? If you don't acknowledge that little voice in your head that is preventing you from succeeding and get it out of your head, then you're never going to be successful in this world. You're never going to take on challenges. You're never going to be able to do those things that you really want to do. And it's not just sports, it's every aspect in life. So I see athletes having more a fear of failure today than in the past. And I think that's largely due because we don't let the kids fail at such a young age anymore. Everything's so protected for our youth that they don't get to experience those little minor setbacks, even from like if you're going to a play date and it gets canceled because somebody said something before and now you're upset and the parents start crying, the kids start crying. Like, that's not the end of the world. You should be able to socially, emotionally grow as a young individual into a teenager with those little hardships that when you're faced with a bigger hardship, you can now manage it. Does that make sense? I don't know if I said that right.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like, so if we're doing things right in sports and we're creating those adversity situations, and if parents at home, they're allowing the kids to fail, we're allowing the kids to fail. Of course, of course, we're all thinking about their self-esteem. We want them to feel good about themselves. We want them to be confident, but we have to give them a realistic view of the world. So then when something like this comes at us, this whole COVID thing, we have these patterns of behaviors and these mindsets that help us deal with this, that we've, in essence, we've been training for this period of time for a very long time in our lives through our athletic and academic career.
Yeah, without a doubt, and, with the fear of failure, I think just the term failure sounds so final, right?
Yeah.
And it's really not. Like if you structure failure in a correct way, that it's okay to fail, then like fail gloriously, like go out, put all your heart into it and give it your all. And then it's a beautiful thing to watch. Like if you watch a championship game in football and both sides of the team are pouring their hearts out and they leave nothing on the field, it's a beautiful game to watch. And really, at the end of it, is there a little heartache? Yeah, but a day, a week, a month from now, you feel very proud of that moment, that game that you were in, because there was nothing left out there. And that's the type of feeling that more people need to get at a younger age, to understand, to give it something your all your heart. And even if you fail, there is such value in that. There's no shame in failing if you gave it your absolute all.
Absolutely. That's why most successful people are very big on watching biographies. It's important to speak to coaches who have more experience and athletes who've been there and done that before, because they'll attest to that their biggest regrets are not always the losses, especially the ones that they've gone all out, they left nothing on the table. Usually the biggest regrets across all sports is, I could have done more. This was a competition. Yeah, maybe I lost, but more importantly, I had the opportunity. It was there and I didn't take it. That's what hurts most people. And when you speak to great coaches like yourself, other top athletes, you see that is what is consistent. They regret not going for it as opposed to failing triumphantly, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I think sometimes we become overly reflective upon a failure. And I think failures are great crucibles in which we forge our character and how we learn and stuff like that. I think that's great. But I think also, often we forget to look back and reflect after a win or after a successful moment, because we think everything was just right and perfect. I think you should be reflective equally when you lose versus when you win. Because sometimes, people just shake off a win like, it's just going to happen again next time. And it doesn't, and you need to be reflective in all your situations.
That's a very important point. And I hope everyone who's watching, or when they are watching, because this is pre-recorded, but when they watch, that's an important point right there, that you want to learn from wins and losses. That's critical. You don't want to just celebrate the win, learn from it. So evaluate, what are 2 or 3 things I did well before? Or What are 2 or 3 things that I did well? What are 2 or 3 things I could improve? So this way, you don't let the lows get too low and you don't let the highs get too high. It's that consistent evaluation all the way through. That's a very important point.
Yeah, and to build on your point right there, when we talk about like self-evaluation and having a couple things to work on, I preach this all the time for our practice is, you should wake up in the morning being in goal setting during the day. You should set I always say, set 3 goals. Have a goal as a student throughout the day. Because, I'm a high school teacher, so they're going to be a student first, right? Have a goal that you're going to work on in school today. Take neater notes, pay more attention in class, whatever. So that's one goal. Then your next goal is to have a practice goal. Like, what is your goal going to be when you come see me? And similar type of things. Are you going to give a little more effort in practice? Are you going to be a better teammate in practice? Are you going to influence and inspire some younger athlete who hasn't bought into the program yet? Whatever. Come to practice with a goal, because it keeps you focused. And then the other goal I always tell my athletes to do is either have a family goal, a community goal, or a social goal. But typically I like to keep high school athletes with goals of school, athletics, and family. Have a family goal, because if things aren't going well in your family, and I think, like all of us, I think sometimes we take advantage of our families because they're always there for us. They're always there. So we don't always say, I love you, or we don't always do even my mom doesn't live far away from me. And, if she wants me to turn on the water in her house for the outdoor sprinklers or something, I even often put that off. But you need to have a cohesive family unit as well. So if you have even if it's just taking out the trash every night in your house or doing some chore that helps out your parents, they're going to be on your back end as well. So I always have short-term goals, 3 a day, right? And even those will help out in this COVID world, right? You wake up absent of a goal or something to do because now there is no more team practice anymore. You should still goal set every day. It makes you more positive. It gives you something to do. And then I have my athletes, or try to have my athletes, reflect that night. Did I do those 3 things? And how well did I do them? Did I not accomplish them? Can I do them better? And then before you go to bed, make a checklist. Can I improve on that tomorrow? Did I do my goal that I wanted to set out for? And so on and so forth. And then set out like a weekly goal, a month goal, a year goal, whatever. Have those little goals add up to your bigger goal, right? Because you're never going to land on a moon unless you learn how to take the baby steps first, right? So I'm big about goal setting with my athletes, talking to them individually. Some of the coaches like our athletes to write them down and post them on their wall. Being a track coach with all different events and all different personalities, I let my assistant coaches, which I have the best coaching staff on the planet, by the way, I let them come up with their own ways that works with their athletes. And what we find, even in our track program, is you have like mini families that kind of go, like the jumpers kind of go with the one coach, and he has his own style, and the hurdlers have their own coach who's a little bit more intense, but that's their family. And so even though we have one program, we have many little styles and ways to kind of accomplish our goals over at Northern Valley.
No, that's great. It makes a lot of sense. And I like that each day is more intentional. They're alert. Yeah. They're more aware when you have those goals and when it's written down and the night before you made some good resolution for the next day, it's just a more mindful day. You're not on autopilot, which a lot of us, it's very easy to shift into autopilot where you're just kind of moseying through and we didn't accomplish anything. Whereas as opposed to I'm using sports to build virtue, to be a better son or daughter, to be a better student, be a better athlete. That's big. And like you said, that's what gets you through the tough times also.
Yep.
We're going through now.
And also too, like if you just have an athletic goal, most of us are hanging up our cleats at some point in our career, right? I would say for 90, I don't know what the stats are, but you could probably say 95% of us, our cleats are hung up at high school, right? Yeah. And then the 5-10% that go off to college and compete, most of them are hanging up their cleats in 4 years, right? So if you're not a well-rounded, well-adjusted person, what do you have after athletics? And when I was competing in college, I see so many of my friends or former teammates struggle. And even I did. I got to say, you struggle when you come to the end of the line and you realize it's the last time you're putting on a uniform. It's a hard adjustment, and so you need something. I wouldn't say to fall back on is kind of the wrong word, because it kind of says like you're leaving a safety net if this doesn't work out. The secret to be a successful person is to be well-rounded, to have a strong approach in multiple facets that make you better in all aspects of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That's really great stuff. Ton of good points there. Now, last thing I wanted to hit on, when we came in, not came in, but when we did the Zoom meeting with your team, were there any good points that you or the athletes took from it? Maybe 1 or 2 good tips or philosophies, things that you liked?
Well, I would say, again, goal setting was something you brought up, and mindset, having a good mindset and a plan are very good things. But trying to find the right motive during the right time, like why are we doing this, and to rethink our motivation, right? I think that was one of the strongest things our athletes kind of came away with. Is it is hard to get motivated in this pandemic time. Right? You don't have your athlete right next to you, your friend. Basically you don't have your friends pushing the pace if you're a runner, running those lonely miles on the roads. If you're a thrower, having, your friends spotting you under some god-awful weight that you didn't think you were going to get up, but because he's there with you, you can hammer out those 5 sets, 5 reps of whatever it was in squats or cleans or deads. Finding the new fuel, or let's call it fuel, right? What is your fuel to charge you up every day? And we borrow, as human beings, we borrow fuel from other people in our environment, right? And people that probably borrow too much fuel are not going to be successful when they're on their own. but as a growing social individual, you know, as a group, right? You know, you rely on other people for your strength often, right? And I think that's important to understand. How am I going to get this new fuel for my tank? And how am I going to get it on an individual basis? Because now, with the way the world is, we're doing things more alone. And that brings me, I think, to another point that I think me and you can talk on a separate note, is that just the term social distancing, whoever coined that term came up with the wrong term, right? Whoever in the government and the CDC thought social distancing was the right term to use for us, it really has a negative connotation to it. It's kind of like when they came up with global warming, that was the wrong phrase to use for anybody who cared about the climate. It's really climate change, right? Global warming probably put the climate change and the climatologists on the back burner for 20 or 30 years for people to care about our climate, because everybody thought, oh, if it's just getting warmer, and it's not, right? Social distancing, I feel, kind of has that same connotation, right? We really want physical distancing, right? We want to be physically apart for our own health, so to not spread this virus.
Right, but not socially.
Right. So if you're physically distancing yourself, the social distance or the social interaction or the social intimacy needs to go up. It has to be an inverse proportion relationship, right? Because
that's a good point.
You mentioned social distancing, you think you're not going to be social anymore. And that makes people sad and depressed. I think if you're going to physically distance yourself away from someone, you need to therefore also increase your social interaction. You know, so I think how you phrase it, it changes your mindset, which is you're all about.
Yeah, and we always say that the word choice, the words that we use have a huge impact, because our words impact our thoughts impact our behaviors, and our behavior impacts our destiny. And obviously the powers that be know that, and a lot of times people use that as a form of manipulation and control. On both sides of the coin, we're not blaming one side or the other completely.
No, there's no blame there. I'm saying it was just
people will use words to control people. And that's why it's important. We use our word choice is very important. I think that's a great point. That's absolutely right. We don't want to, it's physical distancing, not social distancing. And in direct proportion that we decrease the physical, we need to increase the social. Great point. I hope people watching, I hope people watching, we're sitting here with a notebook and a pen, because there was a lot of solid gold nuggets that I think you dropped there that are very important. I'll have to go through, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'll make timestamps on the show for some of those different points. But thank you very much, Coach. I appreciate it. Great stuff.
Oh, anytime. And I totally appreciate you taking out the time to speak to my team the other day too. That was great.
Absolutely happy to help. All right, take care, Mike. Thanks again.
All right, take care, Gene.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.